Alaykum. Oh, nice echo. Can I get a salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Come on, that was really weak. Let me get a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm gonna need a lot more energy than that, guys. Come on, people in the back. Let me get a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Welcome and thank you all for coming. Alhamdulillah. If you could please have a seat. Inshallah, we want to start the program. We're going to be first starting off with a little bit of a welcome activity from our new welcome committee head, Sister Iman. She's going to be starting us off, inshallah. It's going to be a quick 5-minute game. She's going to explain what we're going to be doing. And then after that, we're going to be having Brother Taqi speak about navigating mental health from a Muslim lens, inshallah. I'm going to pass it off to Sister Iman whenever she's ready. If I can get another loud, strong salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sure.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Iman, and I am part of the Welcoming Committee, which is an extension of the Masjid Al-Rasool Youth Board. And our main goal and our main focus as the Welcoming Committee is to, create a space that is warm and welcoming and inviting to all attendees. And if that is something that you would be interested in, you're more than welcome to join. For today's activity, it's going to be a fun little game called 5 Things. So you're going to be in groups of either like 4 or 5. So just look around at your neighbors, figure out who you want to be with. We'll set a 5-minute timer. And the object of the game is to, in your group, discuss and find 5 things that you all share in common. And just as like a, kind of like example, if it just has to be something that's not basic. We don't want anything like boring or basic, so please don't say that you're all Muslim. That's kind of an obvious one. If you're on the men's side, please don't say you're all guys. If you're on the women's side, please don't say you're all girls. Pick something that is unique, interesting, and something that probably the other groups will not have. So I'll give you guys just about 30 seconds to get into your groups, get ready. One person will actually have the list on their phone. So pick within your group who'd like to do that, and then we will go from there. Yes. Okay. Okay. That's fine, that's fine.
First group to find 5 and tell me that team wins.
Okay, sure. I was going to say we could have a prize, but I didn't know if we had anything. So I was like, I don't know if you wanted to because I know we already had a lot of expenses for this event. So I don't know. We could just have bragging rights.
First to
yeah,
win.
that's fine. That's totally fine. Okay. Yes? What? No. I'm starting the timer now. So just to get a thumbs up, is everyone in their groups? Can I start the timer? Are we all ready? Yes? All right, you have 5 minutes. First group to find all 5 things wins. I'm back over here. We already have a group. Wow, that's not even 30 seconds into the game. Okay, let me come and check. No, the third one does not apply to you. Okay, we have one team on the sister side who is done. They have found all 5 things. Is there anyone from the brother side who has found all 5 things in common? You can share if you want to at the end. We still have 4 minutes. You guys took so, yeah, that's fine if you want to. That's no problem. There's not. We didn't sign anything from beforehand, so unfortunately not. So it's 5 similarities that all of the people in your group have together. So basically, you have one? Okay, so you guys are in second place so far. One group of the sisters found it super fast. Just about 3 minutes left, so try to find interesting commonalities. Awesome, so we have our third group that is done. Awesome. You guys don't have to talk if you don't want to. Yeah, you're fine. Thank you. All right, we have about 2 minutes left. Just about a minute and a half left. Are all of the brothers done, or was it just the one group? That's a good one. You guys can put that on. All right, the last 30 seconds. Please finalize your answers. All right, and that is time. So please turn your attention to the front. Are there any groups that would like to share their answers, share their commonalities that they found? Awesome. Do you guys want me to read it out, or do you want the mic? Here. Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, we're all wearing black pants, all been to Masjid and Nabi, all all speak more than one language. All 5, 6, and under. We all love the beach.
Awesome. Those are great commonalities. Good job. Did you want to do for the brother side too?
Sure, we can do one.
Or did you guys want to go?
You want to go? Yalla, go. Bismillah. Okay, stand over here though. Go, come. Podium. All right, stand. It's just right here. Go five right now.
Oh, dude.
It's 5 things.
Dude, just saying. All of our families are from Qandar. We all go to Masjid Al-Rasool. We we all played Minecraft when we were little. We all play soccer, and we all used to go to boxing as well.
Oh, okay. I got five with my group as well. My group in the back, we all play ball. We all go gym. We all are just like history fanatics. We all have a sibling. That one's a little generic. We all love spicy food. Yes.
You do not like spicy.
I love spicy. What are you talking about?
Thank you. All right. We have one more group in the women's.
We're all bilingual. We all have pets. We're all STEM majors. We all attend university, and we all drive Teslas.
Good job, you guys. Are there any other groups that would like to share what they found? Anybody? No? Okay. I'm going to turn it back to Brother Amin then. I don't know where he is. Over there. Crazy. Is Brother Amin there? I was going to give it to him. Yeah. Here you go.
What do I give it to him? I mean, oh, that's cool.
What was our thing? It was born in USA. So we were all born in the U.S. We like basketball. We live in the valley. We don't live in Simi. And which one?
Yeah, we live in the valley. Yeah, we live in the valley. You said two things.
No. It was one thing. Yeah, it was one thing. What were the other two? Oh, we all have had fractured bones, and we're all South Asian.
Okay. Perfect. Does any other group want to go? All right, perfect. So, JazakAllah khair everyone for joining for the activity. Inshallah, now I want to transition it and I want to do a quick intro for our speaker. I know he personally requested me not to say anything, but wallahi, he's an amazing individual, so I have to do an introduction for him. Can we switch the slide, Sahil? Can I get salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right, perfect. So Dr. Taqi, he got his PhD and his MSW from Howard University School for Social Work, and he completed at the completed the W.K. Kellogg Health School Fellowship Program, and right now he mainly focuses on research on studying the psychological, functioning, and behavioral health of urban and immigrant youth from a risk and resiliency perspective. Brother Taqi also is big in the Masjid Nabi community, and he's big also in Pomona and West Covina. Inshallah, if we can get a loud salawat for him to start, inshallah. Salawat. Allah.
All right, I'll get started. Assalamu alaikum. So this was pulled off some type of website. I know that's where he went. I didn't tell him to say any of that. Thank you so much for having me. The first thing I want to start by saying is I'm not really an expert in the area, right? I'm not a clinician, right, by training. I do therapy. I've done therapy. I've been a social worker, but a lot of my focus is really on Muslim kids and conducting research on Muslim kids, right? So I didn't necessarily start off focusing on mental health, focusing on behavioral health. It was just that my research basically guided me to looking at this issue. You guys are working on the HTML? Okay. this is HDMI cord. How'd you guys pull this up?
Can you share it too?
Yeah, I could do that. I could. What's the email address? Let me save it, and then I'll. Got it. Okay.
1 minute, guys. Just quick technical difficulties. Can we get a salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Real quick, before he also continues speaking, I just want to thank Yasin and also Nabi for collaborating with us with this event. And wallahi, I'm really, really excited to be able to finally be able to talk about Islamic psychology. For me personally, this has been one of my biggest passions. I feel when it comes to the Muslim mental health sort of space, there's two things in which usually are kind of concerns that I wanted to kind of address and even was an inspiration for this event today. The first being, because usually spirituality or usually psychology and philosophy have been trying to almost kind of take over the space of spirituality, and people have been using that as a means of not learning about their religion. So one aspect, I want to be able to kind of bring Brother Taqi, Dr. Taqi to speak a little bit on these issues. And then also, we live in a day and age where nowadays a lot of people, they have turned, once again, so kind of bridging off what I said for number one, they've turned this into their deen. A lot of people, they worship their own feelings. They've created their feelings to be their own Rabb, their own Lord. And it's true. A lot of people will be like, oh, like if you make me feel bad, then I'm gonna cut you off. And this is the sort of mentality that people have been created, where it's my feelings over everything else. This is an example of many in which there's been this misbalance that's been created in the community. We'll get the question in a second, inshallah. That, inshallah, we'd love to kind of expand more on. Yes, bismillah.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's not even just in regards to people's people's relationships with each other, but also in regards to, say, parts of the deen, theft and whatnot. They say, oh, I don't want to do this just because I feel like that should be there. Or
Exactly.
Like not right.
Exactly. There's even the term, a lot of us know the term jahil, right? Jahil just means someone who's ignorant, someone who's ignorant. However, ignorance is not just our mental understanding, it's not just the aql. If, let's say, like for example, Brother Taqi, he's doing here and he frustrates me, and if I explode on him, that me just bursting is an example of being a jahil emotionally. We can be emotional jahils as well. And this is another subject where emotional intelligence is an aspect in the Muslim community that is unfortunately not being emphasized, inshallah. No worries. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, do we have any questions or comments before Brother Dr. Taqi begins, inshallah? Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Bismillah.
Got it. All right. It's just my style is always in front of students, so I got you. You know what I mean? I have a hard time standing.
No, definitely. Feel free to move. He can follow you in this area.
Got it. Okay. Thanks so much. It didn't come through, so she's just making sure it comes through.
It didn't go through?
Yeah, I'll try a different email address. Actually, what I'll do is I'll forward it to.
While we're waiting to begin, please feel free to grab any snacks in the back. There's a lot. Please help yourself. Like, we are not going to know what to do if you guys don't eat it. So please grab snacks. Inshallah, after Brother Taqi does his speech, we're going to be having a Q&A for about 20 minutes. And then after the Q&A, we'll be having food, inshallah, just letting you all know. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
I sent it from my university address. Okay.
Do you want her to control from there, or would you like to kind of have the computer?
No, whatever's best for you. What do you think? She might be able to do a better job controlling it, no?
You can just cue you whenever like you're ready for start.
Or I can use, you're okay with me using your laptop? Okay.
You know how to take it from here?
It's just the arrow, right?
I don't know how to use PowerPoint, so how do I press it?
You just go to the next slide. You can either do this, or you can do, it's right here, down there.
Perfect. If we can all gather, inshallah, with a loud salawat before we begin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajhum.
Okay. Thanks so much. So as I was saying was that, for me, I'm bringing my personal experiences, not necessarily that I've dealt with any mental health issues, but probably have, actually, right, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I'm really bringing my professional experiences in working with Muslim kids, especially in the Washington, D.C. area, because and then during COVID, I basically migrated back to California. So I've been back in California for about 4 years now, right? But since then, I was going back and forth working with Muslim kids. And my work with Muslim kids really started in 2001, after 9/11. That was not my goal. So I was basically in school. I know a lot of people play basketball, so I played basketball in undergrad, right? My focus was just basketball. I wanted to be a coach, in college. And then I ended up getting into graduate school, and then 9/11 happened, and I started volunteering my time at City of Knowledge. And that kind of led me to working with Muslim kids. And as I was working with Muslim kids, I realized that it wasn't really the kids. It was the family and the environment that they were coming from. And then it just kind of went. I started off with, varying issues, and then I started talking about families and marriage. But most recently, I've been kind of focusing on mental health, and then what you'll realize is once you start focusing on mental health, you can't really focus on mental health in a silo. You'll have to work on mental health and you'll have to address behavioral health, right? So if you don't handle your mental health in an appropriate manner, in a healthy manner, it generally will manifest itself into other behavioral health concerns, right? So that's just kind of a disclaimer that, or background that I'm basically giving. Now, the one thing that I want to, ask you and ask yourself, right, is what is your experience with mental health? Do you think all of you guys have really good mental health, good health outcomes? Do you think in the last year you've had any type of mental health crises?
I think for myself, it's kind of been like a kind of tug and pull, where I began my mental journey kind of about 2 years ago. But it's like even though like I'm in the space of like working through that, I still find myself challenged where it's like sometimes I'm either over pathologizing, like over trying to like understand how to cope, and then other times it's like trying to find that balance of what does that look like.
Yeah, and we don't want to use mental health from a lack of a better word, a bad word, right? There's something that's been happening for about a year that should be bothering you, that should be impacting your mental health, that should be impacting your heart, right? There's events that have been happening, and if you're a human being, and if your heart is functioning right, if your heart is functioning right, and your spirit is functioning right, that every time this happens, you should be bothered by it. You possibly could lose sleep. There could be tears that may run through your eyes. There could be anger that you may have. There should be a level of hopelessness that may even come through your way. And it may even make your iman stronger because now you have to trust in God even more so because you're helpless against the situation. You know what I'm talking about? What am I talking about? Palestine, Gaza, right? If you're bothered, if you're like bothered where you're frustrated and you're angry or you're crying or you're saying no more, don't send me any TikTok of kids dying, right? And you're bothered by it, alhamdulillah. Pray to God and thank God, saying, thank you, God, for keeping my heart and my spirit pure because I'm bothered by it. And if you're not bothered by it, then even pray harder because why are you not bothered by it? Right? So when we talk about mental health, I don't want you to think of it being something very negative, right? So mental health could be anything. It's about how our social emotional well-being is basically impacted, right? So every one of us will encounter events through our lives, through this week, through this weekend, perhaps even tonight, right? That will add a layer of stress. Now what happens is in normal functioning, when we're able to handle these stressors, we're able to handle them in a very healthy way, right? We can process it. I see something like, the events that have been happening in the last week and the massacre and the genocide that's basically happening, and you're bothered by it. Maybe you cry in your car, maybe you punch the wall, maybe you might even use some, creative language, right? And you get over it, you go home and sleep. Now, where it becomes concerning is if a young child, I got my daughter right here, right? If she gets in a place and she's exposed to these images and she says, Baba, I can't sleep. I'm having these flashbacks. Every time I see a kid I'm thinking about. And so that exposure to trauma all of a sudden is bothering her and it's impeding her sleep, her well-being, right? So those are the things that we're worried about. Right? So all of us from our experiences when we're talking about it, right? We all face every day we're having mental health issues, right? Some dude cuts you off, gives you the bird on the 405 or the 118, whatever you drive up here, right? You want to speed up and get him, right? You want to get him, you're angry. Normal stress. Now, if you get out of the car and you want to start to have a fight, completely bad coping. Right? Terrible coping. You let the emotions get the best of you. Right? So those are the mental health issues we're talking about. Now, when we're talking about mental health, at least when I'm talking about it, there's a huge difference in mental health symptomology, right? And having a mental illness. Symptoms are things like you and I have all the time. Like Have you ever left the house and you're like, man, was that iron on? Did I turn off the AC or did I leave the oven off? Have you had that? All the time, right? None of you guys? Right? That is very, very normal. Now I go back home and I say, you know what, Amina? We're going to be late, but I got to check to make sure I lock the what? We have goats at the house, right? We have 3 little baby goats that we got. So we got to make sure that the enclosure is closed because there's coyotes and they're going to eat up the little dwarf baby goats, right? So I'll be like conscious to say, now I go back, I check that the gate is closed. I go back and I check that the gate is closed. Then I get back on the road and I say, Amina, did I lock it? Did I lock it properly? And I go back and I check again. And Amina says, yeah, take a picture, Bob, on the phone to make sure you locked it. And then I get on the road again and I go back again and make sure, Amina, what about the other side? Now that is a mental illness that's developing, right? Because anytime your symptomology begins to impede your life in any way, that means you need to start focusing in addressing it. It could be that you're making salah and you keep stopping your salah because you made the ruku the wrong way. And you're like, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. And instead of making a salah that may be 5 minutes, right? Or for me in the morning, 2 minutes for Fajr, up and down, right? Because that's all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. I don't have to be praying and the clouds have to split and the sun has to come up and I got to be in tears. That's not what, your parents may want that from you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, make what? Fajr prayer, right? But if I keep doing it and now it's 8 o'clock and I miss the time, Fajr is gone, the time for Fajr is gone, I got to really think about what am I doing? How is this? So what I'm saying is there's a big difference between mental health impact and mental illness. Most of us, it's what we encounter is mental health impact, right? Now, even when we have mental health impact, we need to be aware because we have to be able to address it in a healthy manner. And because we're Muslim, on the path to being Muslim, we have to do it in a halal manner, right? In a halal manner. And being in a halal manner doesn't mean you open up to the Quran and you just weep and just cry. That's good too. But it may mean that you may need other help from family, from friends, professional help, right? Got it? All right. So when we're also talking about mental health, it's very, very important. The first step is you are aware of your own health and well-being, right? So if I go back and now Amina and I are late and we don't make it to youth night and I'm texting Amin saying, brother, I'm so sorry. Things came up. I can't make it to youth night. And Amina tells me, Baba, something wrong with you. Something really, really wrong with you. Like we took pictures, we took a video, we called mommy. She went to the gate to check the goats were locked away. And I said, no, something's not wrong with me. Amina, I'm fine. And she's like, Baba, this is the 3rd youth night you canceled. You canceled that Nabi. You canceled that Yasin. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Something is going on with me. Right? So you need to be aware. You need to be aware when there are things happening. Right? It's normal. Right? My parents passed away last year. In a couple of years, I lost back to back. It's normal for me to grieve. It's very, very normal for me to grieve. Right? But if my grief, right? And I love my parents to death. I would do anything for them. But if my grief impedes me from going on, my father was 86. Right? Alhamdulillah, he lived a pretty full life. My mother's 77. Alhamdulillah, she lived a pretty good life. If it impedes me from enjoying my daughter, enjoying my family, moving on, and having a healthy perspective, I gotta really think about it. That I may not be processing my grief the right way. There might be something going on, and I need to basically address it. So being aware. But the other thing that we need to be aware of, and this is the very huge point that I want to make, is you have to peel the layers about how you process your mental health around how is mental health conceptualized and addressed within your own family and culture. It's extremely important that if every time my father got upset and there was a conflict and he was throwing his bowl of samosas with the chutney across the room, I have to understand that that impact on a subconscious level, it was impacting me, right? I think you probably have heard this term, you parent how you've been parented. You've heard that? Has anybody ever heard that? So you parent how you've been parented. Even though, and I'll speak to the sisters for sure, the sisters will say, I will never be like my mother. I'll never be like my mother, right? They'll never be like their mothers. And then they start getting older and they get married and have kids and they're like, oh my God, I'm becoming like my mother. Right? Why? Even though you may not want to be like your mother, you start picking up habits. The way I'm crossing my arms right now, the way the brother's sitting right here with his coffee, I guarantee you if I see his dad might be sitting like that. Right? You start to pick up things. But these are just mannerisms you pick up. But you also pick up the social emotional processing of your parents, how they process their own conflict, right? Now, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap in how you will process things and how your parents will process things. And you must understand that there's some type of an intergenerational gap. There's a gap for sure, but there's also an intergenerational conflict that sometimes occurs. What do I mean by conflict? I could probably go to you, I could go to the brothers here and I say, you know what, brother I'm not feeling too fresh today. He's like, why? I was like, you know what, I got a dusty shirt on, I wore my sweats, and sometimes I look in the crowd and everybody here got beautiful hair. Everybody got really nice hair. They got some good lettuce on their hair, and I'm contemplating saving my money and going to Turkey and getting some plugs. Like the LeBron KD type. You know what I mean? They're holding on, they're looking nice. Maybe not. But all I'm saying is, my self-esteem is shook. You know self-esteem, right? You know what self-esteem is? It doesn't exist in my father's language. In his culture, where he comes from, you think I could go talk to him saying, I'm not feeling good about myself, Dad, Baba? I'm feeling kind of, you know what I mean, uneasy about my frame. I need to start doing push-ups and sit-ups, get some ab work in. You think I have time? You think you could go to your parents who are in Iraq, who are in Lebanon, the people in Palestine? You think they got time to care about their self-esteem? Right? But if we're living in the West, you have to be sensitive that your kids are going through that issue. Right? Some of you guys have been around parents, well, maybe not you guys, but your parents had parents that might not have even hugged them. Maybe once or twice in their life. I've met people, your parents, I've talked to them, and they've told me that their parents hugged them twice in their life. When I got married, and when my mother or somebody passed away. And it wasn't even a hug, right? It wasn't an embrace hug where you hold on for 5 minutes. It was like the side, I'm a friend hug, right? Right? Some people, some of your parents have never heard their mother or father tell them that they love them. Now, I'm not saying, don't get my words twisted, I'm not saying that they didn't feel loved. The parents loved them immensely. They provided for them. They taught them the deen. They provided a home, clothes on their back, food on the table, moved to an entire new country, left their families behind, left their friends behind, just to move to a foreign land, right? Where they're going to be what? Discriminated against, made fun of, just for the benefit of their what? Kids. That was a huge what? Decisions they made. A decision that many of us wouldn't even make, right? But what I'm saying is, from a verbal standpoint in this country, right? They didn't express themselves. They used the GPS that existed, and they try to use the GPS that existed in their country, in this homeland, and that GPS does not have the same roads. It doesn't have the same restaurants, right? So there was so there was a gap. And then there's a conflict because sometimes your parents are not going to understand all this stuff about you're not feeling good about yourself. You're depressed and down. You're depressed and down. Amina comes to me depressed and down. Baby, you got 3 goats. I fought mommy for 2 months. You got 3 baby goats. You went to all these countries that I've traveled to. You have the luxury of a swimming pool, and your complaint is that it's not heated. Right? You want me to get an EV car. Or we should fly to Qatar on first class, not what? Regular. Right? So what I'm saying is when she tells me, well, she doesn't tell me that, so I don't want you to, don't think I'm raising a diva. I'm not. Right? So all I'm saying is, at the end of the day, right, the things that you may complain about, they don't register in your parents because their experiences are different than yours. Now, that doesn't mean that your health and your well-being is not validated, right? But it's not going to register your parents. So in many cultures, your parents are your first what? Go-to when things go wrong. All I'm saying is, in our culture, your parents may not be the first go-to. And that's okay. So I want you to forgive your parents if they're not sensitive to the pimple on your nose and how that's making you feel, you know what I mean, unattractive. Right? They're like, you don't need to worry about being attractive anyway. Not getting married anytime soon. Like, what's the issue? Matter of fact, we praying for more pimples on your face. You know what I mean? Hopefully not. Right? So all I'm saying is you have to be aware, right? Aware about your experiences, but aware of your own family experiences, right? And that's very, very important. The other thing that you need to understand is and this is a long discussion, right? Is what are the contributing factors of your mental health? Right? How are you conceptualizing? How are you defining what's happening in your life and what is contributing to it? Right? So contributing it is not always what you think. So when somebody comes to me and they need therapy or they need some type of guidance, the presenting problem generally is not always the presenting problem. Right? So what happens is, let's say a child comes to me and they're not feeling healthy, or they're feeling that they have trauma or they have triggers, and they're saying, look, I don't feel good about, my height, my weight, my identity, whatever have you. Right? Even though that may be the presenting problem, the underlying issue is not necessarily that. It's that there's some other causal factors, right, that's leading to that what? Behavior or that problem. And you must do some deep diving through, a personal guide, whether it's a mental health coach, a therapist, or whatever have you, that gets to the bottom line of why things are the way they are. Right? Like, I'll disclose. So my father was an emotional dude, right? I grew up Shia. Oh, I'm Shia, right? So my father would go to Muharram, all the majlises, and just like all the Shia Muslims, he went hard in Muharram. And I would just be like, man, what is going on? Like, just crying, you know what I mean? Like, everybody could hear him at the mosque. I'm like, and he's crying for everything, right? Like, first time he met my wife, he started telling her a story, and he started crying. And my wife was just like, I think your father likes me so much. He was just expressing himself, and he just started crying. And I was like, Keisha, yeah, he loves you. He really, really loves you. Not knowing that he cries for anything. Right? But I couldn't understand what was going on. I just thought he was just a sensitive man. Like, it's okay. He's a sensitive guy. And I'm like, but why isn't he sensitive on what? Me and my brother. Like, he's so hard on us. Like, what's going on? And then he tells me a story about when he was like an 8, 9-year-old kid, and it was during the partition. He basically saw a lot of people get killed. And he saw somebody at 9 years old get severed. Right? The head got severed in front of him, and he said the body kept running without the head. And he said it just shook him to his core. And then he said he saw so much poverty around kids, just basically, like he traveled the world, like Libya, else, and he goes, kids were just dying in the streets. He goes, I couldn't understand. I'm in Muslim countries, and this is how we're treating. So it hit him hard, right? So all I'm saying is, if somebody on the surface would look at like, hey, man up, like, somebody like in our generation, like, come on, can't be crying for everything. Man up. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just be crying because the butterfly ran into the windshield and you're crying for the beautiful butterfly. It's a butterfly. So all I'm saying is, from my father's standpoint, there was an underlining what? issue, right? His sensitivity, right? His sensitivity was rooted in trauma that he was basically exposed to, right? And he saw poverty, and then he talked about his mother who died, and she had cancer, and there was no treatment when she had cancer. So the immense pain that he was basically hearing every night, right? Like in the house, she's screaming and yelling. It was just like, I couldn't take it as a child, right? So all I'm saying is we must understand, right? What are the contributing factors? For many of us, generally, when we talk about mental illness, it is the environment, and within the environment, generally, so if we look at the environment from 4 or 5 different spaces, like the micro, the meso, the exo, the macro, chrono, right? Is generally within the micro systems, which is your family, your schooling, your experiences, right? But then there's also systematic trauma that you could face, right? Do we face any type of systematic trauma, do you think, in this country? Yes, right? Because you are a what? Ethnic minority. For most of you guys, you're an ethnic minority and you're a religious minority, right? And then for the sisters here, they're even another minority because they're a what? Right? They wear hijabs and they're females on top of that, right? So their stuff is completely avert, right? And you might not understand. So when we look at statistics, right? And I'm going to use this other statistics. There's a reason. So the statistics for African American male lifespan, life expectancy is about 10 years lower than white women. Why do you think black people, black men specifically, live less? Go ahead. Huh? Stress on bills. Go ahead. Go ahead. So inherited, very good. Go ahead. Gang violence. So sure, some of you guys are right. Some of you guys are just using kind of generalization, right? Stereotypical, like that's okay. There's some biases that we have. So the reason why black men have lower life expectancy is that generally when we are living, right, and in our life, it's not infectious diseases that's killing us, right? It's chronic diseases. So what happens is for a black man, and it's going to happen to women too, Muslim women, you just watch, we'll see it. I hate to say it, hopefully not, right? That there is a chronic stress of being reminded that you are a black man in society. So every day when you get up in society, you're reminded that you are black, right? And when you look in the mirror, sure, you look at a black man, but when you're driving down the street, you might get pulled over, and you might guys say like, nah, they're not getting pulled over. We're not black, so we don't know. But if you look at the research shows they're getting pulled over way what? More. There's studies that being done that when a person that's white that applies for a job that has a high school degree, and a black man applies for the same job with a bachelor's degree, the job generally goes to the what? White man, right? So now, let's talk about that chronic stress. And what does that do when constantly you walk into the store and people are staring at you because they think you're gonna what? Rob the store. Or somebody thinks you might be in a gang, right? So all I'm saying is, over time, it wears and tears on you, right? Now, what's gonna happen to the Muslim sisters? Do you think them being Muslim in this country, they have to constantly think about the way they look, their hijab, somebody might be staring at them? Do you think so? Yes, do you guys? Yes? Right? If you wore the keffiyeh and you're at the what? Or I wear a Palestinian shirt at Cal State LA, you think I'm gonna stress a little bit? I'm like, yo, I'm deciding to wear this shirt, but I got Zionist colleagues, right? And they're completely say that they are, and that's fine, okay. But do you think there could be what? Some doxing that could occur? Could there be some backlash that occurs? Absolutely, right? So what is that stress going to do to me? Even though I may not understand it, on a health standpoint, it's impacting what? My stress. Why do you think, if you look at all problems across, and this is on a global level, if we look at all problems that people face, do you know what the underlining issue is, the cause of majority of the stuff. So if I was to tell you domestic violence, lack of education, substance abuse, etc., what do you think is one of the primary causal factors of why this occurs? Go ahead. Stress. But where do you think that stress comes from? Environment. And what's in the environment, do you think? Family? Racism? Sure, racism and family are important. It's actually poverty. Poverty intersects everything. It intersects everything. There's higher rates of DV, IPV, substance abuse, etc. You name it, and you will find that what? Poverty is a underlining factor. Right? So that stress will lead to more things. Right? So that's just from an environment standpoint. Right? And what are the solutions? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so the other thing that I want to tell you is that when we're talking about mental health, and especially from a Muslim standpoint, and even the way the Quran, right? There's certain surahs, ayahs in the Quran that speak to mental health, right? Which I'll hopefully have time to discuss with you. Is that when we're talking about mental health, we're not looking at mental health from a pathological standpoint, right? Pathological standpoint basically is about labeling somebody that they have an illness, and that illness will continue to what? Stick, right? So in the public school system, right, oftentimes you have kids who'll come, right, and they'll have some issues, whether it's like behavioral issues and they get an IEP. Once you have an IEP, that IEP follows your child for what? Forever, until they're what? Graduating, and sometimes even into college, right? And that's basically labeling that. So when we're looking at mental illness or mental health impact, right, from a Muslim standpoint, we're not operating from a stigma standpoint, not a labeling standpoint that occurs, right? So when we're talking about non-pathological standpoints, right, is that, when we're looking at it, we're saying there's issues that people have, but there's context for why those issues occur. And when those issues basically occur, you can address those issues, and those issues are basically what? Gone. Khalas, they're done. Right? So my mother passed away, my father passed away shortly after, I'm in grief, I'm in pain. Somebody says, hey, let me address why you're so in pain. Maybe I'm in pain because I never got a chance to say goodbye to them. Maybe I was holding on to something. Maybe my mother wanted to tell. So I basically write a letter, make a dua, go to the cemetery, pray, I get it over with in 12 sessions, 10 sessions. And the person says to me, the therapist says, you're done. You're good now. You addressed it, you're fine. Maybe on the anniversary of her passing, you might have these feelings, but you're good. Right? A pathological approach will continue with that. Right? It'll use more of a medical model. Now, the other thing I will say is, just because I'm speaking about mental health impact, I don't want to, and I really want to say this is, because our community is not necessarily ready for it, there are cases where there is some biological issues that cause severe mental illness, right? When we're talking about, schizophrenia and things of that nature, there's biological aspects of that mental health disorder that we need to account for, right? That we need to be honest with ourselves as well, right? Okay, so when you're keeping time, right? Because I know I'm probably running out and I've been speaking.
15 minutes, I believe.
Okay. All right. So when we're talking about mental illness, the one thing I want to let you know is that when we look at the background, and I don't need to necessarily go into it, is that when we look at the statistics, from whether it's the World Health Organization, when it's the CDC, whether it's the National Institute of Mental Health, is that mental health is a major concern among all ages, right? So you have, when we're looking at, child development, right? When we're looking at human development, and we're looking at the different stages of development, right? Lifespan development, what you'll find is that even kids that are very, very young tend to have mental health impacts, right? So even early on, if the family system is not addressing their mental and social emotional well-being, they're going to what? Have some issues, right? Now, I'm not saying the solution is, we also live in a state, in a time where everybody has to get a participation trophy, right? Like I grew up, it was just first, second, third place. And if you didn't get first, you didn't really place. Like second, third, that's like the first and second runner-up to first, right? It just didn't count that way. Now, like everybody has to, that also can have a detriment, right? As much as my daughter wants to be good at everything, and she is pretty good at everything, right? I have to give her the reality that some things she might just be average, right? As much as you guys are telling people on your Instagram and all this other stuff that you're 10s, the reality is most of us are 7s. That's the reality. Most of us are 7s. Like that's what it is, right? But everybody's gonna say, nah, you're a 10, you're 11 in my book, you're a 12, right? Everybody wants to be that. But what I'm saying is we have to also be comfortable with just saying what? I'm a 7. I'm happy with that, right? I'm good, right? All jokes aside. I mean, you guys are 10s because you're at the mosque, you're at 10, right? So what we want to do is we want to understand that there's a lot of concern, right? Now, when we talk about mental health, there's three or four major issues that arise, right? So if you look at the research, and even among Muslim kids, what you'll find is depression is one, anxiety is another, right? PTSD or trauma of some sort is another, aggression is another, and some level of behavior stuff, right? That comes up. Now, sometimes what happens is, generally, they call depression and anxiety the kissing cousins. What that basically means is that if depression shows up in a child, the likelihood of anxiety showing up is also likely. And if anxiety shows up, there's likelihood that you'll also have depression, right? So that's something that does show up, right? Now, what has happened, do you think, that has exacerbated, what do you think that's happened that's exacerbated mental health in our society? 9/11? Were you even born in 9/11? Yeah. Oh, your parents? Okay, good. Somebody said it. COVID? Absolutely. What else? Rise of social media. Right now, if I told you this is going to cure you of everything, this is going to cure you of all good, you guys are going to have exceptional mental health, I need you to do this before you leave. Just drop your phone in that box right there. Your cell phones. Most of you guys will struggle with that and will probably not do it. Either you're not going to trust me because I might go through your phone and find some stuff and tell your parents, right? Or you might be like, I just can't do it. I need my phone. I need my phone, right? The anxiety that you will have, right? So from that standpoint, believe me, your phone has made it what? Made you impatient. I'm probably the oldest one here, so nobody's going to probably relate to me when I say this. There was a time in this world, let me tell you this. There was a time in this world where in order to get the internet, you had to plug a wire into the phone. And you had to dial the internet, and it would be like, doot, 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 doot. And you had to wait there like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. And then it would say, you are connected. And you would jump up and down and be like, I'm connected to the internet. And then somebody would download a file, and the file would be like, boom, 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 boom. And it would take 10 minutes. And you would get the file, and you'd be like, oh, alhamdulillah, I got the file. Somebody, my brother in Iraq sent me the what? The Masjid in Najaf. The Urbain picture, and you're like, alhamdulillah, I see it. And it's blurry. You're like, iPhone 2, blurry. You know what I mean? That was the time. But guess what? Guess what? We had super duper patience. We were excited, 2.5 minutes. And then if your mom picked up the phone and she was like, auntie's calling me, or I need to call your baba and make sure he gets the onions on his way to work, the internet would get disconnected. And you're like, Mom, what'd you do? and then you have to start the what? Process again. Now let you not connect to Wi-Fi when you're sending out message and text messaging for 30 seconds. You start going what? Nuts. Start going nuts. Right? And the same level of impatience now is leading to what? You see that? What do you think it's manifesting into? No. What do you do when you're in traffic? It could be. What are you doing in traffic? You have the same level of impatience when somebody what? Cuts you off. And so now you're seeing all this road rage happening because people can't cope with just what? Making their exit 15 seconds later than what it should. Right? So all of these things are basically manifesting. Right? Also, what's happening is the anxiety. Now, they did a study. So there was a study that was done where they took phones away from adolescents for 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. Do you know that their symptoms, the symptoms in these adolescents was worse than people coming off crack cocaine? So they compared people. So you know about when you're addicted, right? When you're addicted and somebody so when you go to a place where you have to get detox, a person is going to feel pain, right? Because their body is detoxing. And you're going to feel anger, and you're going to get mad and upset, and you're going to threaten the people who did this to you, and then you're going to start what? Threatening your own self. That if you don't do this, if you don't give me this drug, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to harm myself, I'm going to do this, and if I get my hands on you, I'm going to get you, I'm going to do this. What do you think those kids were doing? They were acting the same way. They were literally acting the same way. And people couldn't believe that these kids, just on a cell phone, had the symptoms like they were addicted to basically drugs. Right? And then, on the other hand, the social media companies, and it doesn't have to be social media companies, any type of marketing firm, they're basically relying on your human experience, right? So as somebody that does a drug, it impacts their dopamine. It helps them, right? It helps them feel good, right? So does a what? A right click on your little TikTok, on Instagram or whatever. All it's doing is what? It's rushing to your dopamine, right? So it's impacting you. Now, I say this to say, not because you're addicted to your phones or anything. You might be, I don't know, right? But it's definitely going to have an impact on your mental health. And then the other thing that happened is during COVID, because COVID was a great opportunity, right? To spend family time, yes? Sit around the table, have lunch and dinner together, talk to your parents about how they grew up, your mom telling you about how she met your dad and she just fell in love the minute, you know what I mean, he made salah, he's like, that's it. And how they recited the Quran together, right? That's what you did during COVID? Or did you go up in your room and isolate yourself for hours and hours on your phone? So what you did was, not only were you on your phone, because of what happened in the world, we were isolated from what? Human contact. And because we were isolated from human contact, right? From our peers, from our loved ones, we also started to what? Right? Not get the necessary energy, right? And the feeling that we're supposed to get by interacting with one of us, right? With each other. So then what came? Your phone became your device. It became Sheikh Mudaris for a while. Right? You're like, Sheikh Mudaris, nah, I'm good. But I'll see him after COVID. But right now, this is my Sheikh. Right? And it did. Right? So, and if there's nothing, so what I'm saying is, sisters and brothers, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with, well, there might be a little bit with social media, right? But if you're not aware of it and you don't moderate your use, same thing with your phone. If you're going to sleep with your phone underneath your bed, underneath your pillow, the last thing that you check is your social media feed, and the first thing you check is your social media what? In the morning, there's an issue. There's a problem at hand. Because you shouldn't be reliant on that. And much of it is not reality. It's a fantasy. I just told you. Most of us are 7s, except you, Amina. You're a 12 girl. Right? So all I'm saying is, right? I'm supposed to say that, right? So all I'm saying is most of us. But what I'm telling you is that there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that. because we're over relying. And even if you're relying on that, the issue is that it's going to impact your mental health. If you think it doesn't impact your mental health and well-being, it is going to impact you. If you think you're looking at these women and comparing yourself to these women, or you're comparing yourself to the men, right? And you're saying, man, Andrew Tate, whatever the dude's name is, right? You're with it. You're like, oh man, that's masculine. He's coming with masculinity. Alhamdulillah. He said Shahada, he's Muslim now. So he's on our team. If you're comparing yourself to him, it's not reality. These women are not a reality. These men are not a reality, right? So it's going to impact you, right? Okay, so when we look at Muslim mental health, unfortunately, the research that's been conducted, right, on Muslim mental health is showing that Muslim kids are being assessed at a higher rate on certain mental health issues. So Muslim kids are having higher anxiety, right, higher depressive symptomology than their counterparts. Meaning that when they looked at white, black, Latino, Asian, and they looked at Muslim kids are higher, right? They're higher on these issues. So there's something going on with Muslim mental health. The other thing is that even though, alhamdulillah, we're doing well as a society, so Muslim community as a whole, if you look at the research, we're highly educated, many of us, so the education level is pretty high. It might actually be one of the highest, right? And income-wise, we're a middle class, right? Society. We should not have the mental health issues, but we're having mental health issues is because there are things going on within our culture, within our families, and within our identity development, right? The biggest challenge for Muslim kids, right, and even young adults and even adults is being comfortable in your own skin. Most of us will go through our life and we will never get comfortable in your own skin, right? So for example, if all of a sudden I grow 2 little braids right here, like my hair is bald, but I got like a little bit of patch of hair that grows. And I decided to say, you know what? I'm gonna rock this. I'm gonna grow it all out. And because I like the Lakers or Clippers, I'm gonna what? Paint it purple and yellow, and I'm gonna braid it up. And I get clowned and I get laughed at, right? But I'm comfortable in my own skin to be like, man, I don't care what people say. They're laughing at me at the mosque, they're laughing at me at my job, you know what I mean? But I'm comfortable. Most of us aren't comfortable because society doesn't make you comfortable. It makes you uncomfortable and it makes you insecure, right? What Islam basically says is forget all the insecurities. The dunya is going to make you what? Insecure. There is no security in the dunya. All your security is through what? Your faith and your family. The things that what? Matter, right? So when we look at Muslim kids, there's something going on. And then, and let's just be honest, there's enormous stigma in our communities. Mental health is not a healthy topic. If mental health happens, if there's some type of issue, right? Our parents, our families try to sometimes even hide it, right? They rub it away. They're like, don't tell nobody. No, we're not going to tell you were seeing somebody for depression or anxiety, or you were doing some gummies in the background because you were too depressed in your closet and we caught you, right? So all I'm saying is because it impacts the good family name. It might impact your marriageability. What are they going to say about me and your father and this, that, or the other? Right? So sometimes people don't want to talk about it, and because they don't want to talk about it, who suffers? The child that needs it. Right? So sometimes we have to be okay with addressing this issue. Right? Okay, we're running out of time, right? I didn't even get to the main part, but that's okay.
Real quick. Salamun Alaykum. So out of respect of you guys' time, it has been 45 minutes. However, I want to gauge you guys. Do you guys want to go for another, let's say, 15 more minutes? If yes, raise your hand. Oh wow, mashallah. Okay, bismillah, 15 more minutes. And then we'll be doing, after that, about 15 to 20 minute Q&A, if you guys are comfortable with that, inshallah. Bismillah. Salawat.
Okay, so I'll just kind of talk about, I'll just continue, and I'm not going to talk about too much of the data and research. You kind of get the point, where Muslim kids are showing up, right, on the spectrum of mental health, right? Now, what I want to talk about is what are some things that exist within Islam that help us address our mental health? What do you think? What do you think is, go ahead, brother. Prayers. Perfect, right? The daily prayers, right, that we make, it's almost a reset, right? That's basically instituted within our what? Faith, right? Because when you start off in the morning, you're doing what with God? You're praying, right? You're having a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? To clear your mind to start the day off. So if you pray, oftentimes, and you're using mindfulness and you're praying, you're actually praying and you're present for your prayer, what are you starting off as? Clear-minded. Are you starting off negative or are you starting off positive? Do you feel a sense of accomplishment when you wake up for Fajr and you pray, you make Fajr prayer, you're like, and I did it. I didn't even rush through it. It wasn't even like a 60-second salah. Like I actually, you know what I mean? Pronounced every little what? Ayah right? And I was actually able to pray for me, my family. Does it feel good? Right? So it's developed that way, right? But later, as you're leaving, so you pray at 5:30, 6 o'clock. As you're leaving to go to school, on the 10, on the 5, whatever, you curse somebody out. Like, man, you just curse somebody out really, really badly because you were late to your class or work or wherever you were going. Maybe you were going to get the Krispy Kreme donut and you're like, I can't get the hot ones. I don't know, right? So all I'm saying is you're going and you curse. But guess what? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have in store for you later in the afternoon? An opportunity to pray again. To be forgiven for cursing some innocent person out. It was just an old lady. She was driving in carpool. She didn't know. And you cursed her out for nothing. Right? So all I'm saying is you get another reset. If you get angry, should you rush through your prayers? Right? You should take your what? Time, but not in a time where you're just going super slow. Not in that manner. Right? Not in that manner. It's that you are becoming what? You prepare. So instead of going right into Salah, you take 30 seconds. Like you ever seen, and this is me because I did it today. I was late today, right? I was late today, so you guys were playing Maghrib. I went right into Maghrib. But as I was praying in Maghrib, what was my body and my mind frame? Do you think I was present? Or I was basically like, I got to make it up. I got to make it up. So when I got to the prayer, I wasn't really into the prayer. I made the prayer. I got it done. But when I think about it, I'm like, if I would have just taken 30 seconds to get myself together, to get my thoughts and be like, let me not rush. Okay, I'm present. I'm here. I'm at this masjid. I'm in this prayer. Now I'm ready to pray. I would have had a much better what? Productive prayer. So then I had to remind myself for Isha, when the brother said, no, we haven't played Isha, I was like, okay, good. Now I'm bringing myself down. I'm getting myself peaceful. Right? So all I'm saying is prayers. Your salah is the number one thing that you can do to help your mental health. What else? What does Islam, go ahead, sister. Talking to family and friends, right? Because family is a major what? Part of our deen, right? What else? Goodness will happen, absolutely. Reading Quran, right? Reading Quran, there's nothing better you can do than read Quran. But that's not the only solution. So I don't want you to think because yes, Quran is going to help you. But there might be some things where you might need some guidance, where you might need to talk to your mother or father or brother or sister, right? It might be time that you could read the Quran, but you might need to make salah. Go ahead. Absolutely, and I got some that I was going to share with you, right? The other thing that's also developed, and this is very, very important, what else exists that helps your mental health? Good. Exercise, yes, but Quran does talk about it. Yes, sister. Helping other people, right? Because helping other people does what? It puts things in perspective. It always will put things in perspective, right? If anything that you've learned from Gaza is perspective. If anything, right? We don't know why this is happening. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us this because He's trying to have us internalize what we have. What is the benefit of us being where we are, right? When we complain, when we argue, when we fuss and fight, right? When we're dividing ourselves, right? What does that tell us? Even if you are what? Becoming more conscious and saying, you know what? This little strawberry, I ate all 6 of them. I got 1 left. I'm not going to throw this in trash. I'm just going to put a napkin and take it with me. And you're saying, yeah, because kids in Gaza don't even have that. And even if that alone made you change your behavior, then alhamdulillah. Right? Who knows why that's happening? Right? So helping others, right, also helps. There's something else we're forgetting. There's something else that Islam has implemented for us. Fasting. Absolutely. So fasting also helps. Fasting not only helps your body from a biological standpoint, it also puts your mind at a different what? Stage and level. Right? So those are things that are basically attributed. Now, if we were to look at the Quran, right? And if we look at the hadiths of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Right? If we look at what's been said in the hadiths, right? From our brothers in the Sunni text and from the Shia text and in between, do you think mental health is addressed? It is. It is mentioned, right? There's different ayahs where it's actually mentioned, right? Where the Prophet even what? Has talked about his own what? Struggles. Do you think he had some struggles? When do you think he had some struggles? Do you think he was just happy talking about, I've been spreading this world and nobody wants to become Muslim? Ha ha ha, no worries. I'm good. You think he was good with it? Do you think he struggled that he was trying to bring all these tribes together and they were still doing what they were doing? He was devastated by that. Did he have some painful losses in his life? Who passed in his life that was so important? His kids, wife, right? So he had enormous what? Pain. And he didn't just what? Bounce back and said, oh, you know what? I lost somebody. I'm good. And he's going through the bazaars making deals. No. He struggled. He struggled. He had enormous pain and grief that he went through. So he talks about that this is about normal human functioning. It was normal human functioning. And there's passages to say, look, as human beings, we're going to go through these challenges. But there's nothing that God is going to bestow upon us that there's not a solution for. Right? If something is created, there's also a solution for it. So when we look at the Quran, there's enough in there when we do the research that mental health is what? Discussed. Now, what does the Quran, prayer, all that do? It helps us, right? But what if we still need additional help? What do we do? What do you think we can do? Go ahead. Therapist. Now, some people would argue, so from a cultural perspective, because there's a taboo, right? That we'll see a therapist, we'll do this, we'll do that. Some people say, no, just go see the leader of your community. You could see the what? Sheikh, right? You could see the Maulana, you could see whoever, and they will address your problem. And that is not a bad idea. So by no means am I saying it's a bad idea. But you also have to understand is not all sheikhs are going to have the same what? Perspective and mindset, right? And I'm not disrespecting any of them, but from a educational standpoint, their training might not be in that what? Field, right? So is it okay to talk to Sheikh Mundaras and be like, Sheikh Mundaras, I'm thinking about getting an S550, or should I get the Model S? He might give his opinion, right? But he might tell you, brother, I'll give you my opinion. This is what I think, but I'm not a what? Expert in this area, right? So they'll do it, right? Now, fortunately, there are many sheikhs who are getting educated in the social sciences and psychology and human development, right? So there's individuals who are well versed, right? Now there's even courses on Muslim mental health and psychology, etc., that they're basically taking. So there are good. Now, what you can also do is you can go seek professional help, right? Now, the one thing I will say is you have to be sensitive, and I don't mean to, be negative. You have to be very, very concerned, and you have to protect yourself as well. And be careful of what you share within a community setting, right? Personal disclosure is important and it's good. It's healthy because it helps you connect with somebody, right? So now that I mentioned about my insecurity with my head, I got a brother who's like me too, brother. Now we connected. We connected. So I disclose about my what? Baldness. I'm connected with the other dude too, right? I'm playing. I'm not. They all got hair. But all I'm saying is, but you have to be careful. So you just don't want somebody and say something, you're like, what? You did what? Because you don't know how that person is going to judge you. So you have to be careful. It could even be a family member. And you have to be careful of how you're judged. True story. And I'll kind of end this. So we were sitting at a table one time, and I hadn't seen my friend in a long time. I lived in D.C., and so I'm hanging around like all of my like hoop friends, right? So there's like 3 guys that I'm hanging with. And we're just talking like, oh man, things were so tough and this, that, and the other. And the guy was like, I did everything. I can't believe I did crack. And I was like, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, we were in high school, you know what I mean? And I was like, I looked at my friend, I was like, did he just say what I think he just said? So my perspective, as soon as he said crack, I was like, man, my perspective about him changed completely. Not that I was judging him. It made a whole bunch of sense why he was acting the way he was acting. But all I'm saying is, you have to be careful. You're not going to tell somebody some things and think that that's not going to what? Impact your relationship with that person. So you have to be careful. I'm not saying if you're struggling with somebody, absolutely go to your mother and father. Absolutely go to your mother and father. And hopefully they hug you, they love you, and they say, let's get some help, let's get you through this. Right? But you're not going to talk to your homegirl or your friend or whatever, and disclose all the personal information, and now your stuff is on social media. And like, you know what Fatima told me? I can't believe it, girl. Right? And all of a sudden, by the time it gets to what? Batul, it's a what? Completely different story. Right? Supposedly you're going to run away with Ahmed, you know what I mean? And move to Qatar. And you're like, well, I didn't even say nothing like that. And now the rumor goes across and it gets to your mom and you're in trouble. Right? So all I'm saying is be careful what you disclose. That's why you need the trust of what? Guidance. You need sheikhs in your community. I know Sheikh Madras, wonderful dude, right? Wonderful guy. Right? Sheikh Razavian, and they're good people. They're going to guide you. But you want to go to people who are going to protect your confidentiality. Anytime you go to anybody that you see, there's what we call confidentiality, and then there's breach of confidentiality. Confidentiality can only be breached if you're a threat to yourself or others, or somebody's harming you. Right? If I work with kids, if they're a threat to themselves, if the brother here says, man, I got a little shank I brought and I'm cutting Muhammad tomorrow. I'm slicing him up. And I said, what? And he goes, I got it right here, brother. Brother Tucky. And he shows me his shank. That's it. Confidentiality's done. I'm calling his what? Mother, father, I'm calling everybody. I'm like, look, I'm doing it for your own self. Right? But if he says, I feel like shanking him. I just feel like his hair that he got, he's just teasing me. Puts gel, sometimes he braids it up. Sometimes he has it loose like he got out the shower, you know what I mean? I can't stand it. And I said, but do you really have a shank? He goes, no, I'm just saying, I'm just frustrated. I said, just save up, just go to Turkey. They got good hair plugs, but, right? So all I'm saying is you have to be very, very careful. You have to be careful. If you're going to go to somebody, understand that they will breach confidentiality, and sometimes it's in your best interest, right? And it's their job to work through, work through. And if you don't get the help, then you don't need to deal with that person. And the last thing, because we only have 30 seconds, is there's enough of a network in this country where you can get help. There's Muslim counselors in the LA area, in the DMV. There's a whole bunch of Muslim counselors for every issue that you could think of, from any addictions to severe to lightweight stuff, right? All I'm saying is be aware of your own mental health, and then maybe in the future, if I come back, we could talk about the contributing factors, about what's leading to the really main causes of what's causing Muslim kids, and then talk about some fundamental solutions, right, for addressing their mental health. Thanks so much.
صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. I think we need another salawat. Honestly, that was an amazing lecture. We're going to do Q&A. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. All right, so we want to open it to a Q&A for about 20 minutes, inshallah. If you go to the website sli.do with the code, and I'll read it to you once you guys pull out your phones, inshallah. It's going to be 1742413. You can ask anonymous questions, and we'll be upvoting them. Inshallah, we can get them right to Brother Taqi, inshallah. You have it pulled up? You see it by any chance?
Oh, what's that?
Okay, so if you could pull up slide.io, you can see the questions that
I
are the
don't
most.
have that.
It's just a website, inshallah. Yeah.
Where do I go?
SLI. The code is 17424.
SLI?
SLI.do. 1742413. SLI.
Slido.com?
Yes. Yeah, first one. Code is 1742413.
17424?
2413. Slide.io. SLI.do.
Dio?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. This?
Yes.
Okay. Just type it again. Oh, okay.
It should be here. So the code is 1742413. I began my own mental health journey about almost 2 years ago now. And what I want to emphasize is, see it this way, because just like he said, we have two almost types of individuals. We have, firstly, the type of individual who is struggling with a mental illness, and then we have people with symptomologies. So these are two separate types of individuals. Now, those who are going through that everyday struggle where these symptoms are affecting you now, this is something in which, wallahi, it's necessary for us, even deen-wise, to seek help for that. And even for a lot of individuals who say, okay, well, you know, I'm well off, whatever it may be, a lot of times, see it this way. Let's say if you're trying to drive to Masjid Rasool, you're going to be driving from your home to Masjid Rasool. Yes, you could drive 30 miles an hour and get to the masjid in about X amount of time. But if you drive 10 or even 20 miles faster, you'll be able to get there sooner. That same analogy, we can use that in our own lives. At a lot of times, we are doing things. However, if we're able to understand more of, okay, what exactly am I doing on a day-to-day? What is holding me back from being able to improve more? You can understand that mental health is oftentimes there at the roots. So with that, I'm going to transition to Brother Taqi to open up for questions, inshallah. Bismillah. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Okay, so I'll start from the top. The first question is, is there any courses or speakers that you personally recommend to Islamic psychology? Absolutely. I mean, if you could personally email me, but there are actually a lot of Muslim counselors, and there are Muslim counselors now that are starting to focus on certain issues, right? So there are individuals that are working with, let's say, domestic violence, addictions, cutting, suicidal ideations, right? So there's different Muslim professionals, right, all around the country that are basically focusing on specific issues. Now, as far as courses, there's not a course necessarily you're going to be able to take to address your own mental health, right? It's going to provide you knowledge and context that's going to help you bring insight into what's going on. The worst thing you can do actually is try to self-diagnose your own self. Like, anybody heard of the DSM-5? Have you heard of the DSM-5? Right? So it's basically like a book on disorders, right? But if you start to what? Look at the disorders and you start to what? Right? Look at your own symptoms, you will walk away at the end of the night, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I got 6 different disorders. Because all the things you read is going to what? Come up as like, I suffer from this, I suffer from that. So you don't want to necessarily what? Diagnose your own self. You want to have some type of guide or even a speaker. The other thing is sometimes you just need validation, right? Sometimes you may be going through some issues and they're not even, as I said, they're not like rooted in pathology. It's just some issues you're going to. Of course, if I stay on TikTok and I'm a young person that's looking for a wife or something or a husband and I'm looking for these things, right? If I'm a female, from a female standpoint, right? Of course I might become insecure. If everybody's talking about how beautiful, how this, how that, this is what I have, this is what of course you're going to become insecure, right? So these are just normal things that you might go through. Doesn't mean you have a severe mental health impact, right? Okay. So another question is, there's a lot going on with Muslim mental health. Can you address the Shia part of it, like ziyarah, and what are some good resources? Well, I mean, anything that you do that's going to help you, if I'm understanding the question correctly, that's going to help you, give you a healthier perspective, and become closer to your deen and your iman, alhamdulillah, it's healthy. Right? It's healthy. But the other thing that happens is that you want to be very, very careful in not being addicted to it. Right? So, if Sheikh Madras was there, I would love to ask him because he's more of an expert. So even if you are praying all day, if all I do is come to the mosque today, and all I do is, my daughter has to be home, and what I do is, I just make salah, and I said, Amina, we're not leaving because I've missed so many years of salah, and I'm going to make it up tonight. Is there a problem with that? Can you be overly Muslim? Can you be overly Muslim? You can. So you want to be careful that even addressing your mental health, if you're saying it's Quran, but you're not fulfilling your obligations to go to work and your family and your loved ones, right? Then that becomes a problem, right? Hopefully I answered that question. Maybe I misunderstood it, right? Okay, do you have any speakers or okay, we already did that. You mentioned that young kids are showing signs of mental health symptoms. What are some behaviors? So this is the important thing. Young kids are not able to express their social emotional health and well-being. So you can't look at somebody 7, 8 years old and be like, what are you feeling like? You can't have that conversation. They're not going to have enough insight. They'll tell you that they're happy, they're sad. You can use emojis and they'll show you. But what happens with kids is their social emotional well-being, it manifests into other things like behaviors, right? So when you see your child, if I see Amina all of a sudden, mashallah, she's speaking with somebody, she's engaged. But if she's what? Quiet tomorrow, and she's not watching TV, and her goats are getting neglected, they're just babaing all over the place, and she's not checking on them, right? And she's not coming out of bed, she doesn't want to change her clothes, she's not excited to go to, I don't know, Dave's Hot Chicken or something like that, right? If she's not, then I got to think about that something is going on. Because verbally, she can't express what's going on. So it's my responsibility as her what? Father, as her caretaker, to ask the right questions. Where when she's 16, 17, 18, or in her 20s, she's going to be able to what? Express herself. Right? I don't have to worry about that. Oh, it was your friend that you got in an argument with at school. That's what caused you. And she gives me the answer. No, at 20, 25, she might be like, look, me and my Habibi husband, you know what I mean? We got in a what? Fight. He's talking about bringing in what? Chickens, and we like goats. And this is a goat household. It's not a chicken. So she could tell me that they have an argument because she could express herself. So from a young kid standpoint, you always want to be very in tune with your child, because when they're not able to socially, emotionally express themselves, it's going to show up in their behaviors. And it shows up in your own behaviors. You believe me, your parents know you when you've been in the room too long. Right? You know, your parents know you if you haven't showered. Your parents know you that you're not hanging out with friends. Your parents actually are in tune a lot of the times. Right? So when they know that, they're basically asking about your well-being because your behaviors are changing. Right? And that's what mental health is. When mental health is good, your behaviors are good. When mental health is not what? As good, your behaviors might be. And what happens is, from a Muslim standpoint, when you're not feeling and you're not coping, you tend to cope in an unhealthy manner. Okay. Do you have any advice for community leaders on how to work and remove mental health stigma? So I think the problem is that the conversation oftentimes around our community leaders does not need to happen to the youth. Like this session that I'm doing, even though it's important, I feel like many of you guys probably are aware and know about this. I think my topic would be more helpful for parents. For parents to understand what's going on, for parents to know that it's not a big deal. We don't need to stigmatize. And the other thing is that we need to lift, right, the cultural stigma that exists, the taboo that exists, that these problems that exist are because you weren't praying hard enough. You weren't making salah enough. See, this is what happens when you don't read salah. You're like, out of all the things in the world God is worried about, He's going to bring me this issue because I missed salah. Right? And sometimes that's how our parents say. See what happened? You know how sometimes you fall? See what happens when you don't make salah right away? You fall down and trip and you bump your knee. Like, really? That God is punishing me this way? Like, this is the punishment? Because I didn't read Quran? I read it too fast? Right? So all I'm saying is we need more awareness in among our what? Parents, right? Okay. Islamic psychology successful. Also, it says, are Islamic psychologists successful or beneficial? Are they? Yes, they're definitely educated enough. And the other question is that, question was asked is whether you should go to a Muslim, right, therapist or non-Muslim therapist. So I'm not saying a non-Muslim therapist is not going to be successful, but you have to understand is you're going to someone who may not have cultural sensitivity and awareness around a specific topic, and you're going to them and they may not be aware. So you have to do a whole bunch of what? Explaining about. And then the other thing is, regardless of what you say, there's a bias that you're coming in with. And all of us are biased. If you say you're not biased, you're completely lying. All of us are biased, so any person that's not Muslim is going to have a bias. Let me demonstrate. If I told you to close your eyes right now, close your eyes. A farmer, a doctor, a teacher, a nurse, a basketball player, a rapper. Okay, open your eyes. When I said a farmer, why did you think about blue overalls, red flannel? Why? Why were you majority of you guys thinking that? And the race of that person was probably a white man. It's because you've been socialized since you were young in the books that you opened and when you're being educated. When I told you about a nurse, why did you think about a female and not a male? Why can't male be nurses? So all I'm saying is just like how you've been socialized on a subconscious level to think a certain way, so are these people who are non-what? Muslims. Society is training them on how to think about Muslims. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to make a point that
Good.
some religious therapists, or I would just say one thing to look out for is that some religious therapists are like, they're more knowledge-based than like actually emotions-based.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to also, just like you're shopping for phones or cars or whatever, you got to get one that's best for you. The first therapist you go to doesn't mean that that therapist is the best therapist for you. Right? And I would honestly tell you, when you go to therapy, the therapist is not helping you. They're not providing a solution for you. I hope you know that. When you go to therapy, the job of the therapist is help you help yourself to heal. So they're actually a guide. No therapist is going to say, and they're going to say, Ahmed, I got the magic pill. Take it and you're done. I need you to come 12 times. No. If I go to Ahmed, it's my job to get Ahmed, right? To get his what? self together to where he's helping me, he's helping himself heal from whatever is going on. And I'm basically guiding, and lifting them, right? So oftentimes, it's not the therapist. The job of the therapist is for them to help you help yourself. Go ahead. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, therapists sometimes, if they feel like you're too volatile or like have like unstable feelings, they won't exactly be 100% honest with you. So I think that another good thing is to present yourself in the best way like the person meeting.
Absolutely. So what therapists will first do is they'll look at your affect and your well-being, right? And so you have to be careful. If you present certain symptoms, if it's a good therapist, there's what we call baseline. So if somebody comes sees me, I'm not judging that person off the first encounter that I have, right? It's not even the second encounter. It may not even be the third or the fourth encounter. It's by the fifth, sixth encounter, I'm going to look at what they've been presenting, right? Because I have to make sure the baseline is the baseline. If somebody comes in angry one week, doesn't mean they're going to come in angry next week. Because if I just judge them off that anger, I'm going to say, oh, it's aggressive symptoms, right? I'm going off that. Something might have just happened in life. Next week they come and they're high, right? They got alcohol in their breath and weed aroma all over. And I'll be like, what? Last week was aggression. This week is what? Substance abuse. Then next week, if they're what? Angry again, I'm going to say, oh, there's some co-occurring stuff that's happening, right? There's some mental health with a co-occurrence of substance abuse. So you have to absolutely, right? Make sure that the problem is the problem, and be careful because there are therapists who will go right to medication. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Okay, sure. And we're probably not going to get through all of these.
So just to let you guys know, if we're going to be swapping, so he's going to do one question from the Slido and then one question from the audience. So anyone right now, if you have a question, please raise your hand, inshallah.
I'm going to read one. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so outside of your family, your peers are going to be your next social circle, right? And from a developmental standpoint, the major developmental milestone that somebody goes through in life outside of family, and you guys specifically, and some of the younger people during adolescence, is group identity, right? Everybody wants to have a sense of belonging. So the young sister there, absolutely, it's important for you to have friendship and peers. Now, if a person is not good for you, then you actually have an obligation to let that person know you're not good for me. Or if you're not comfortable and able to address that, then you have to eliminate yourself from that situation, right? Because you holding on to that toxic friendship is going to dictate how other friendships are handled. So I'll give this advice because many of you guys may not be married. The first time you argue with your spouse or your loved one, the first time you argue, and the second time, the first couple times that argument happens, you are basically establishing how things will be handled for the remainder of your what? Marriage and your relationship. So from sister right there, from the friendship standpoint, if you allow yourself to be in toxic relationships and friendships, you are establishing a pattern, right? Establishing a model of how you will handle what? Relationship. So if you let a toxic friendship impact you and you remain in that friendship, then what's going to happen is you're going to think that's the norm with the next friend you have, right? And then all of a sudden you're normalizing this toxicity. So it's very important for you to verbalize, to say, if it's a Muslim friend, then you let the person know, this is not, right, of a good Muslim person, right? This is not halal. And secondly, you're hurting my feelings. This is not good. And I don't want to continue this relationship with you. And you have to own that and be okay with the consequences. Because even when you have that type of situation, there's always going to be consequences for the decisions you make. But if you're doing it in the right, appropriate, halal manner, then you need to be okay with it. right? There's a question that came up that I do want to answer. It says that, just to sum it up, a person in the audience says that they became very, very disappointed and just kind of gave up on Islam and being religious, right? Because of what they saw among people, right? So it says, they would like my take. I started to just have people that seem too religious. I like your take. So the issue is that when you have individuals in the faith, you can't punish the faith for the people who practice the faith. Right? You're coming to this mosque, you're a Muslim because there's beauty in this faith. The faith is perfect. We have the best book, we have the best leaders, right? Right? From Al-Rasool to Al-Bayt to all of those individuals. So these are the individuals we look up to. If you're coming to the mosque and you're letting a person who may be arrogant, who may be backbiting, who may be doing this, right, take you away from the faith and detest the faith itself, you need to kind of rework that perspective that you have. Because it's not the faith, it's the people. Right? So oftentimes there's saying that says Islam is the best faith there is, but sometimes the people that practice the faith are going to disappoint you the most. Right? And that you get a lot from people that are new to Islam. They love the faith. They're like, Alhamdulillah, the mosque is so beautiful, this, that, or the other. And then the first time they get what? Sliced by a Muslim person. Like, I can't believe that person just cursed me out. Or I went to ask them for their daughter's hand in marriage, and said, oh no, not you. And you're like, what? Right? And they're just completely, it's not, the faith doesn't do that. It's the person practicing the faith. So we have to be very, very careful. Now, if you're going to the mosque that's making you feel that way, leave that mosque. Your commitment is not to that, your commitment is not to that mosque. If that mosque is not being fruitful to you, it says, there's many different places where you could talk to Sheikh Madaris. He would even say, continue to come, have that relationship, but if it's not, you go elsewhere. Right? Why would you still come and let your iman be impacted by another individual? You're giving too much power to that individual, and we want to be careful what we give power to. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets that power. Nothing else. Right? Not even the hair in Turkey that you guys are going to think that I'm really insecure with my hair. I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I was in Turkey and I scared my daughter thinking she really thought I was going to go. Yeah. Okay, any questions in the audience? Because I know we're going to wrap up soon too. One last question, okay. Okay. Any? So I'll go, you want me to go to this one? Okay. Somebody, okay, I'm sorry. So absolutely. So my training was in social work. So I was actually a kindergarten teacher for a while. And as I was teaching kids, I actually got into social work because I noticed it was the kids that had issues, it was the families, right? So as I started to look, I went into social work. And I thought about psychology, etc., but I went into social work, and social work was really beneficial because social work allows you to do many different things. So with social work, I could go into working in the prisons, I could do substance abuse, I could do mental health, I could do all kinds, I could be a school therapist, all of that. So what I would say is that if you're thinking about that as a profession, right, it's very, very fruitful. If, like, for example, like a clinical social worker right now, if you're a clinical social worker, the starting pay is probably like anywhere between 100 to 150,000 to do therapy remotely with no boss, right? So there's plenty of opportunity if you're thinking about finances, right? It's also beneficial because in this time on earth, in this country, we have severe mental health issues. Now, this is a very important part. The hard part about being a social worker or a therapist is you're going to see a lot. And it's going to pain you a lot. And you're going to walk away really, really traumatized at times, right? So as much as I would like to say that when I was working as a social worker, doing therapy, that everybody was just, I could do all these jokes. You are talking to people who are severely, severely traumatized. And you will ask yourself, how can individuals, like how can people be so inhumane to kids, to their wives, to their husbands, to just people in general, right? So when you're coming across that, alhamdulillah, you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you say, thank you for letting me see this, because it's giving me what? Reward, and I'm humbled by seeing this, but it's also going to take a toll on you, right? But it's a very, very important field. I think it's extremely rewarding. So I would encourage anybody. The challenge is that it hasn't, in our community, it hasn't been something that we strive for, because culturally, many of you guys come from cultural backgrounds where engineering and the hard sciences like medicine and all of that matter most. So even when I was being a social worker, my father was like, what is that? Like, what are you doing? Why are you going to get a PhD? Just get a job. Like he couldn't, he didn't really understand it, right? And I will tell you from my standpoint, I cannot believe, my life is a dream. I could honestly tell you. Like every time I wake up, I cannot even believe that I'm bestowed this life. Like it is a complete dream. Like somebody pays me to do what I'm doing. It's mind-boggling. And I get to spend all the time with my daughter. I go to work like 1 day a week. Like this semester, are we live? Because I can't share this about my work. Are we still live? Like literally. No, it's fine. I basically will go to my work 5 Mondays, 6 Mondays, and 6 Tuesdays until December. That's my job. That's my job. And not the whole day. Not the whole day. Like 3 hours. 3 hours. So when you guys get excited about like 3-day weekend, 4-day weekend, nah. What is that? I get like a 6-day weekend. Now I do work from home, of course. So I'm not saying just in case my boss tunes in, right? I do work from home a lot. But I'm saying the autonomy that I have, right? It's amazing. And I think sometimes people overlook it. It's not the quantity. Think about the quality of life that you want to. Right? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's get one more salawat to Brother Taqi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Bismillah. So, what do we have planned next? So, inshallah, for Masjid Youth, we want to, firstly, of course, we're going to be having these discussion-based events, and inshallah, we want to have more of a balance between fun and discussion. But specifically, we want to build on your Muslim identity. So, we want to be starting with these once a month tarbiyah circles, where it's going to be focused, where we're going to be focusing on Aqidah, and it's going to inshallah be led by a teacher once a month, so it's kind of going to be building in that throughout that process. And inshallah, we want to be starting next month. So I believe, what do we have? What was it? September, we should be having our first event, or our first class, inshallah. It should be the first week, either the first week of September or second week of September, we're going to be having that set. But more excitingly, inshallah, we want to also do a sports tournament. Now, this is something we're going to be collaborating with a lot of different other masajid, maybe even MSAs. And if you are an organizer, or if you're someone who's interested in being a part of this, we're going to be kind of introducing the committees as well too. So we're going to pass them to the next slide. So if you want to be able to be a part of this community, if you want to see the change in this community, please come sign up. Whether it be right now, we are focusing on our media committee, whether that be creating content, being able to let more people know about what we're doing here at Masjid Rasool. We have secondly our Externals Affairs Committee, which is focused on creating those external relationships, being able to collaborate, being able to grow as an org with other organizations. And then thirdly, our Welcome Committee. So the same way how Sister Iman did an amazing job today doing the welcome activity, the intro, also we want to make sure that, hey, how did you guys like the event today? And we're also going to be, after this is going to be set up, we're going to be having a QR code for you guys to let us know, hey, how did we do today? Because we want to know how we did, and we want your feedback. So this is the QR code. If you can scan, please scan this QR code. I really, really urge you, because we want your genuine feedback, and really give us harsh criticism. Like, don't be as blunt as possible. Wallahi, we want to be able to take the most blunt advice so we can take that and grow, inshallah. Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I believe, so we have the feedback. Saha, was this the last slide? We have one more. Okay, yes. So once again, if anyone needs, we can leave the other slide up for the committees. And we'll kind of like swap back and forth between the two. But right now, please go ahead and grab yourself some food. We're so sorry for keeping you guys so late. Alhamdulillah, but JazakAllah khayr. Thank you so much for waiting. And just letting you guys know, we're going to be having boxes. So grab the boxes, and the people in the back will give you which serving of meat you would like, inshallah. So just grab a box, and if you need to go, you're all set, inshallah. Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.